Hi scholars, it is Amanda here, and I wanted to engage you a little bit today in this great space debate. In other words, when you're typing a paper, for example a research paper or a paper for a class, do you put one space after the period or two? Go down into the comments below and let me know, what is your normal practice? What do you normally do? One space after the period or two? Okay. So the reason that this is actually a debate is because the APA's stance and other style guides, they've changed their stance on this process from year to year and edition to edition, and it's kind of created a lot of confusion and debate within the community. So one of the things that students will often come to me and give me questions about is what's the right way to do it? Should I put one space or should I put two? Why is this even an argument? I learned it one way. I have two different teachers and they're asking me to do two different things. It's so much stress. Well, the first thing that I try to do is just say, stop. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at what the APA actually says about it in the newest edition, which is the 6th edition, and that's your blue book. On page 88 is where it addresses this question. And here's what it says. It says, spacing twice after punctuation marks at the end of a sentence aids readers of draft manuscripts. I'm going to throw this book away because that's not really that helpful. Unless you kind of know what a draft manuscript is, for one, and for two, what is a reader of a draft manuscript? What does that even mean? So a couple of things to notice here. First of all, the APA did not come down very strongly and give a strong definitive rule. Rule number 4 point whatever, you must put two spaces after. What they did was they kind of gave a suggestion here. They said, hey, you might want to consider your reader when you're typing your paper. So a draft manuscript, what is that? Well, what a draft manuscript is referring to is sort of, as scholars, as you guys move up in your scholarly journeys, you're going to be writing studies and papers that you're going to be submitting to journals. So for example, the Journal of Telemedicine or the Journal of Occupational Therapy or whatever your field of study might be. The idea is that later down the road, you're going to be conducting experiments, trials, studies. You're going to be sending out surveys, asking people what their experiences are with X, Y, or Z. You're going to be comparing the effects of X to Y, that kind of thing. And then you're going to collect all this data, and then you're going to learn something. And based on what you learned, you kind of want to share that with the community of scholars who are also studying the thing that you're interested in. And the way that we share that as scholars is by submitting those papers that we write about our study, submitting those studies to journals, like I said, like the Journal of Occupational Therapy or whatever it might be. When we submit to these journals, the journal does it. It's not like an automated thing where we just submit it and then it's published. What happens is that those journals have people that work for them that actually read through all of these studies to edit them and make sure that there's not any typographical errors or formatting issues or whatever before they actually get published in the journal. And so these people, they tend to read a lot of these drafts, okay? So when you're submitting that to the journal, you're submitting a draft. And that's a draft of your manuscript, of your study that you wrote, okay? So when they say draft manuscripts in here, that's what they're talking about. Spacing twice after punctuation marks at the end of the sentence aids readers of draft manuscripts. So it's just making it a little easier for them to read through those because they read so many all the time. And so that extra space just kind of helps them get a little pause at the end of the sentence, and then they can go on to the next one. Kind of helps with their flow of reading. Now, again, remember, this is not a prescription. You have to consider your audience. You have to say, what am I writing here? Who am I writing it for? I'm writing a paper about my educational philosophy, let's say, in an education class, okay? So who are my readers there? Well, it's probably my teacher and maybe some people that I'm in class with. What if the class is online? They're not going to print this thing out, and generally, the kerning and online, what we call the spacing and the digital manipulation of the letters in an online space tends to be such that that extra space is often not even needed. And so it might be okay if you just use one space in those situations. My ultimate suggestion is to make sure you're having a conversation with the people for whom your manuscript or your piece of writing is intended, and make sure that you know what their expectations are. It's also just really interesting also to note that certain journals may have a different requirement than other journals. So not all journals require 2 spaces, some require 1. So again, it's just really important to have that conversation with those people who are going to be reading your work and say, hey, what do you prefer? Now that I know what they prefer, now what if I'm a 1 space person, but they want me to do 2? Or what if I'm a 2 space person, they want me to do 1? Now I have to go back and rewrite my whole paper and just check for spaces. It's so tedious. This is where I'm gonna suggest that you use the search and replace, the control find option in your Word software. So if you just use that control button and the letter F, control F, it's gonna pull up this seek box, this little search bar in your Word software, and you can search for, type in a period and a space, and it'll show you, excuse me, everywhere where there's a period and a space. Excuse me. But you could also do it the other way and put a period and 2 spaces, and it'll show you where you have a period and 2 spaces if you need to change it the other direction. Now you can do what's called a seek and replace, or a search and replace, and you can replace that with the other thing that you want. Do a quick Google search on how to do a search and replace if you don't already know how to do that, and that's how you're going to fix it, going back and forth from people who prefer it different ways. So again, don't forget to go into the comments and tell me how you like to do it, 1 space or 2. We'll see you next time, scholars. Thanks.